Alright, so now let's move on to the male reproductive system, and we can look at how the sperm cells are being made. So it's just talking about the functions of the male reproductive system to produce sperm cells, to transport the sperm and the fluids, and to secrete the male sex hormones, which is testosterone and androgens. Primary sex organs or gonads are the two testes. Now the testes, the way that this is spelled, that's the plural way. Singular would be testis. And so this is where the sperm cells or the spermatozoa and also testosterone are being produced. Okay, so here we're seeing a picture of the male reproductive system. I will put up the picture that I would like you to study for the quiz that I will have for the online quiz. And then this is just another picture showing the position of the testes, and there's also the epididymis that is connected kind of to the back and top of the testes. And so we're going to learn that the epididymis is where the sperm cells go to mature. And then when it's time for ejaculation, the sperm cells leave the epididymis, go up the vas deferens or the ductus deferens, and so then they're traveling in the body. First, they're going to encounter, or I should say vas deferens connects to the seminal vesicle. There's this gland. Seminal vesicle will produces this alkaline fructose fluid. Then the sperm cells will travel to go into the prostate gland. So here there's the duct, ejaculatory duct. Sperm cells will travel in that. Then the ejaculatory duct is going to connect with the prostatic urethra. And so then the sperm cells are then going to move in the penile urethra or the sponge urethra to then go and exit. The structure of the testes, know that the tunica albuginea just means the covering of the testes, connective tissue. Lobules, it just refers to the compartments in the testes. Okay, but then we need to know that in the testes are these very, very small tubes called the seminiferous tubules. So this is actually where the sperm cells are being produced, in these tubes. Write this down. Then there are also these other cells, interstitial cells. These interstitial cells are between the seminiferous tubules, so not inside but around them, and this is where the testosterone is being produced. So here, let me just draw a little picture here just to show. So just imagine that these are the seminiferous tubules, and because they're tubes, there is the canal on the inside. Then you have the cells. I'll just make like these circular shapes here. These cells are then the Leydig or the interstitial cells. So that's where the testosterone gets produced. But the sperm cells are being produced inside these tubes there, seminiferous tubules. Okay, so here we can see, it's kind of what I was trying to draw, but this is just showing one seminiferous tubule. And here, those circular shapes, those are then turning into the sperm cells. And so then the sperm cells, when they're produced, they go into the canal, inside the tubes. Around the seminiferous tubules are then the interstitial cells, so outside of the tubes, where the testosterone gets produced. Sustenticular or the Sertoli cells, these are located in the seminiferous tubules. These help to hold the developing sperm cells, give nourishment to them, so it's kind of like a structural support that they provide. Sperm formation proceeds in the sequence. So I'm going to draw a picture of this for you guys. What the cells, or the original cells that will turn into sperm cells, these cells are called the spermatogonia. These are diploid cells. Then we're going to learn that these go through mitosis to form primary spermatocytes. Primary spermatocytes go through meiosis 1 to form 2 secondary spermatocytes. Then each of those 2 secondary spermatocytes go through meiosis 2 to produce 4 spermatids. And then the spermatids will then change their shape to look like the normal sperm cells or the spermatozoa. And so these cells are going through meiosis to reduce the number of the chromosomes. Spermiogenesis is when the spermatids turn into the sperm cells or the spermatozoa. And spermatogenesis refers to this whole process. This whole process is spermatogenesis, starting from the spermatogonia and ending up with the spermatozoa. Okay, so here this picture from our book is trying to show the progression of this, but I like to draw this nice and large here. Let me get to the blank page here. So I'm going to draw basically a similar picture to this. Alright, so now let's see how the sperm cells are being produced. I'll make a few drawings here. Alright, so pretend that this is showing the inside of the seminiferous tubule. And then I'm just going to make a shape like this just to show that that will be the canal running on the inside. So I'm not drawing the whole tube, but just a section of it. Okay, so located in the seminiferous tubules, we have the Sertoli cells. It's kind of holding these sperm cells in place. Here, this cell, these cells are at the edges. These are the diploid spermatogonium. The way this is spelled, this is a singular way. If it's spelled with, instead at the end, N-I-A, then it makes it a plural word. Okay, so spermatogonium will then go through mitosis to form primary spermatocytes. Primary spermatocytes are still diploid. Then the primary spermatocytes goes through meiosis 1. And if you remember, meiosis 1 is now separating the number of chromosomes into 2. And we're going to end up getting 2 cells here. And so here we have formed 2 secondary spermatocytes. And of course, notice there's so many spermatogonium inside each of these tubes. And so each one is going through these steps. Then the 2 secondary spermatocytes will separate further, each one into 2. And we're going to get 4 haploid spermatids. And I'm going to write down here spermatogonium, that one is diploid, primary spermatocyte is also diploid. Okay, but if you remember at the end of meiosis 1, you're forming 2 cells, but now these ones are haploid. And the spermatids are haploid. Then these spermatids, so now notice they're circular. They don't look like sperm cells. So now they're going to go through changes to look like the sperm cells. So now I'm just going to draw like some sperm cells here. That's to show that they have changed their shape. And so each one is turning into a sperm cell. When they turn into their shapes like this one is called spermiogenesis. Okay, so this picture here has a lot of information. So we'll do a few true-false practice questions here. I said true or false. Primary spermatocytes go through meiosis 2. So let's say if I said that, that would be false. No, primary spermatocytes, think primary first, they go through the first meiotic division or meiosis 1. Or if I said, also just remember which ones are haploid, which ones are diploid. Okay, so you're starting the haploid one with the secondary spermatocytes. So another question could be true or false. If I said secondary spermatocytes are diploid, you would say no, false. They're haploid instead. Alright, so as the video talked about, here are the parts of the sperm cell. You need to know that the head part contains the acrosome on its outer part. The midpiece has the mitochondria, and the tail is the flagella. Epidermides, that's a plural word, singular is epidermis. So this is the region that is located kind of to the back, a little bit on top of the testes, and it's just also made up of a lot of tubes. Know that the epididymis is for the maturation of sperm cells. For the glands, seminal vesicle or the seminal glands, These make an alkaline fructose fluid. Know that. Prostate gland, this makes a fluid that increases sperm motility. And the bulbourethral gland is for a lubricant type of a fluid. And so each of these glands are contributing to the fluid part in the semen. For the prostate cancer, I'm actually not going to ask you questions about this. I'm just saying that it's important to go through these exams to check for enlarged prostates. Some men may experience frequent or slowed urination. Blood tests may check for this protein, prostate-specific antigen. So if there's prostate cancer, the cancer cells actually release this more. But yeah, so it normally liquefies the ejaculates, but excess is produced when cancer cells are present. Okay, then next, male infertility. Also, I'm not going to ask you details about this. So it talks about the causes. Failure of the testes to the son could be one. Inflammation of testes from certain diseases such as mumps. Poor quality sperm, low sperm count. Those would be more genetic conditions. And sperm analysis would be used to check the sperm for these different genetic conditions. Erection versus ejaculation. Know that erections are made possible through the parasympathetic nerve, and the ejaculation is made possible through the sympathetic activation. Then next, the hormones that are responsible for sperm production and testosterone production. Gonadotropin releasing hormone. This one is released by the hypothalamus. Okay, put a star by that one. So it says in the next line, in response to this hormone, GnRH for short, when this goes to the anterior pituitary, then anterior pituitary releases its own hormones. Gonadotropin just refers to these two hormones here. LH gets released from the anterior pituitary. This goes to those interstitial cells or the Leydig cells. Remember, these are the ones outside of the seminiferous tubules. So it causes these cells to release testosterone. Then the FSH, or the follicle stimulating hormone, know that this one instead stimulates the sustentacular cells, or the Sertoli cells, so that they respond to testosterone and they help with the sperm production. So in the presence of FSH and testosterone, sustentacular cells stimulate spermatogenesis, so that the sperm cells can get produced. And there's negative feedback to control these hormones here. Let's go to the next slide. That will show us a very good diagram. Okay, so here, just a summary. Know that GnRH is made by the hypothalamus. GnRH then goes to the anterior pituitary, causes the anterior pituitary to release FSH and LH. FSH has its effect on the Sertoli cells, or the sustentacular cells. Sertoli cells are driving spermatogenesis. LH instead activates the Leydig cells, or the interstitial cells, so that those cells can release testosterone. And testosterone is also driving spermatogenesis. For the negative feedback, if there's too much testosterone, then it's going to go up to the hypothalamus and inhibit it, and it can also inhibit anterior pituitary, so that they stop releasing their own hormones. Because here the testosterone says, okay, we have enough, you don't need to increase the stimulus anymore. And there's also this other hormone, inhibin. Inhibin is released by the Sertoli cells. And again, this is just another way to say, okay, let's just kind of slow this down, slow the production and release of these hormones. This is just a picture from our book, just basically showing the same stuff, how these androgens are working together to promote the sperm production. Then the last part for the male is just talking about actions of testosterone. Prior to birth, testosterone is important for the development of these reproductive organs and the descent of testes into the scrotum. During puberty, enlargement of testes, enlargement of the accessory organs, and then development of these secondary sex characteristics. And so here's just a list of these secondary sex characteristics. Increased growth of body hair, it might be slowly decreased growth of scalp hair, enlargement of the larynx. So remember the Adam's apple, which is actually the thyroid cartilage. This is getting larger and the vocal cords are getting thicker. thickening of the skin, very increased muscular growth when this is compared to females, and thickening and strengthening of the bones. Okay, and that's it for the male reproductive system.